Mapipigil kaya ng dasal ni Pastor Quiboloy ang mga kasong isinampas sa kanya ng Amerika? Disqualification laban kay BBM ibinasura ng Comelec. Kung ma-disqualify si BBM after the election, si Sara Duterte ba ang magiging presidente? Abangan ang mga usap-usapan namin sa Batas, Pulitika at iba pa.
Joining us for today's program, isang veteranong abogado sa Amerika, isang criminal defense attorney. He's also an attorney in the Philippines, a graduate of University of the Philippines. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Attorney Jeng Valdez.
Oh, thank you. Good afternoon to all. Magandang hapon sa inyo lahat. Thanks for having me here, June.
Sure.
Ed.
Thank you. So, Jun, ang pag-uusapan natin ngayon yung one of the most wanted fugitive ng FBI.
Yep. No other else than Pastor ba tawag sa kanya?
O si Apollo Quiboloy.
And he is known as one of the top supporters of President Rodrigo Duterte. And kailan lamang naglabas yung Federal Bureau of Investigation dito sa Amerika, FBI, ng isang most wanted poster. So kasama siya sa most wanted list ng FBI. Jen, can you explain to us or tell us ano yung mga charges na inihain laban kay Pastor Quiboloy?
Sa aking kaalaman, maraming mga charges si Quiboloy, pero ang pangunahing batas na charge siya under yung tinatawag nilang Title 18 United States Code, Section 1591, and a series of other provisions there that had to do with the outlawing of sex trafficking activities that affect interstate or foreign commerce. Kaugnay doon, meron ding dalawang batas na meron ng Amerika, yung tinatawag nilang Mann Act or otherwise known as the White Slave Act of 1910 and the Justice for Victims of Trafficking Act of 2015. Lahat-lahat yung pagka pinagsama-sama, kinicriminalize nila yung transporting of women for purposes of prostitution and other immoral purposes. Ngayon, marami ring mga charges kay Quiboloy na may kaugnay doon sa mga pera na natatanggap sa pamamagitan ng illegal setup of activities meant to get money from other people, fraud, money laundering, and all that. Pero ang pangunahing charges na nagiging wanted siya for is yung ang Title 18 USC 1591, which is the outlawing of sex trafficking activities that affect interstate or foreign commerce.
And I also heard meron ding mga involved dyan na mga visa fraud. Ano ba itong mga visa fraud na ito na inalis na ginawa niya?
Again, sa aking kaalaman, gumagawa sila nung para makakuha sila ng mga tauhan dito na makakapagtrabaho legally, parang nagse-set up sila ng tinatawag na marriage of convenience.
Okay.
O parang kasal-kasalan, asawa-asawahan, which we all know is in violation of immigration laws. So, bukod pa doon, pero yun ang pinaka-main allegations that constitute visa fraud.
So, Attorney Jeng, itong nabasa nating mga newspaper release about Quiboloy's case, ang nagsasabi doon, na sinasabi nila na naglabas daw ng indictment yung grand jury. Ano ba ibig sabihin ng grand jury?
Okay, magandang tanong yan, Attorney Ed, kasi para maliwanagan yung mga ating mga viewers, kasi medyo iba ang criminal justice process dito sa Amerika kaysa doon sa Pilipinas.
Right. Kaya sandali. Alam mo yan dahil abogado ka rin sa Philippines, di ba?
Of course, yes.
Tapos, eventually, nagpunta ka rito naging abogado ka na rin dito.
Tama yun.
At
Tama yun.
ngayon, ikaw yung tinatawag nating criminal defense lawyer. Marami kang hinahawakan mga criminal cases.
That's correct.
Okay. O sige, tuloy mo, sir.
Thank you. Kasi kailangan malaman natin yung diferensya between the criminal justice process sa US and sa Philippines. Tapos dito, meron din diferensya yung state level at meron din diferensya doon sa federal level. Ang pinag-uusapan natin dito yung federal level. Sa federal crime, kasi nga, ang nangyari, ang mga paratang kay Quiboloy is yung karamihan ng ginawa niyang krimen o katiwalian nag-cross ng state lines or ng international lines. And they also violate US federal law.
Ngayon, sandali, sorry for interrupting. Nasabi mo kasi yung iba-ibang state crimes. Ito ba dahil may mga incidents na nangyari tungkol sa mga incidents or allegations of crime na nangyari kay Quiboloy doon sa Hawaii?
Oo, totoo yun. At meron din siyang tinatawag na nexus o connection dito sa California and other states kasi nga ang alam natin na nagtayo siya ng mga simbahan at mga padasalan na marami siyang trabahador na nangongolekta ng mga pondo at nagtatrabaho na rin para sa kanya. So kaya naging federal matter ito.
Kaya FBI ang nag-imbestiga sa kanya.
Yes.
So, Attorney Jeng, ipaliwanag mo nga ano nga ba yung grand jury investigation na ito? Anong pagkakaiba nito sa gaya ng nadidinig natin, jury sa trial?
Okay. Dito sa Amerika, kapag federal crime ang inimbestigahan, nag-uumpisa yan sa isang report. Parang ordinaryong crime din. Sa Pilipinas o dito man, may nagre-report. May nagre-report ng katiwalian o krimen. Ngayon, kapag ni-report yun sa federal level dito, the next process is to determine which agency should be pursuing the investigation. Halimbawa, kapag ka-drugs, DEA yan. Kapag ka-terrorist, DHS, Department of Homeland Security. Kapag ka mga white-collar crimes o mga gantong common crimes, FBI yan. So ngayon, what we know is that ang FBI ang pumick up ng investigation ng report ng crime tungkol kay Quiboloy. Once they pick that up, they will conduct an investigation. Their investigation consists of interviewing witnesses, obtaining documents. When it comes to obtaining documents, they have to go to a magistrate and ask for a search warrant. Or in the alternative, instead of going to a judge, ask for the judge to issue a subpoena or a warrant, gagawa sila ng tinatawag nilang grand jury investigation.
Okay.
Yung grand jury, mga koleksyon yun ng mga common na tao, i-compose nila yan, i-impanin nila as one, and give them the power to subpoena documents from people, hear testimonies from witnesses. So ang lumalabas ngayon, yung grand jury na yon ang nag-iimbestiga. So ngayon, kapag ka nag-issue ng subpoena ang grand jury, halimbawa, sinubpina ako ng grand jury para mag-testify, kailangan pumunta ako doon. O kaya, hiningan ako ng mga dokumento ukol doon sa mga charges, kailangan bigay ko yun. Kapag pag hindi ako pumayag, pwede akong ikulong for contempt.
I see.
Attorney Jeng, sabi mo, pag sinubpina yung mga sa grand jury, ito ba yung mga ordinaryong tao lang doon na kahit sino lang tatawagin ng US government, pagkatapos i-impanel sila, bubuuin sila, pagkatapos doon ipipresenta yung case.
Yeah, ganun na nga. Ganun na nga. Pagka na-impanel at na-constitute na yung grand jury, doon ipipresenta ng prosecutor o ng US Attorney General or US Attorney yung kaso. Ang nag-i-issue ng subpoena ngayon, hindi na judge, yung grand jury na. So kapag ka nag-issue ng subpoena yung grand jury at nakinig sa mga testimony ng mga witnesses sa sinubpoena nila, ang susunod na step is for the grand jury to determine whether or not there exists probable cause.
Sandali, Attorney Jeng. Kapag gumawa ng presentation yung US Attorney o yung prosecutor, yung bang defendant's attorney, alam ba, abogado ni Quiboloy, pwede bang umatendo sa grand jury para i-presenta yung side ni Quiboloy?
Depensa niya.
Sa alam ko, walang ganun. Ang alam ko, ang grand jury indictment process is, in my own words, is a one-sided show. Basically, it's a prosecution show para i-present kung ano man ang ebidensya na meron sila laban doon sa akusado, sa nasasakdal, at i-submit yung mga ebidensya na yun sa grand jury for the grand jury to make a determination whether or not there should be sufficient cause for indictment. Parang sa criminal case dito sa state level, yung tinatawag nilang preliminary hearing.
Or sa Pilipinas, yung preliminary investigation. ng fiscal or prosecutor.
Yes. So, bakit ganun? Kasi hindi naman determination of guilt for good ang issue dito. Ang issue dito is probable cause lang.
I see.
Kumbaga kung meron bang probable cause o karapat-dapat na paniwalaan na pwedeng batayan na idemanda o i-charge itong taong ito. So, yun ang mission ng grand jury, to find probable cause.
As opposed sa jury sa trial na nakikita natin, ang purpose ng jury sa trial is to determine kung criminal case, kung guilty or hindi yung kinasuhan.
Beyond a reasonable doubt.
Pero dito, hindi ganun ang objective
hindi
ng
ganun.
grand
So
jury.
itong mga members ng grand jury ito, Atty. Jeng, mga parang secret yan, confidential, hindi natin alam kung sino yan, no?
Hindi natin alam. For the most part, the grand jury indictment process is confidential. So, hindi natin alam yun. Bigla na lang lalabas yung indictment.
So, okay, sandali, Atty. Jeng, bago tayo magpatuloy,
Yeah. Break muna.
Break.
Okay, Attorney Jeng, after na napaliwanag mo yung proseso sa grand jury investigation, na they came up with the charges against Quiboloy, tapos na-issue na obviously yung warrant of arrest, kaya nga nalagay na siya sa most wanted list ng FBI. So, ang problema, tanong ko ito, marahil nako-confuse din yung mga kababayan natin. They know for a fact na Quiboloy is roaming scot-free in the Philippines. In fact, nag-organize pa nga siya ng presidential debate. At tapos, binigyan pa siya ng isang stasyon na dating frequency ng ABS-CBN ni President Duterte. Samantalang dito, nasa most wanted list siya. Anong mangyayari sa kanya? Ano bang next step for the US authorities to bring him to justice?
Okay. Pero bago tayo pumunta doon, there's one last segment of my previous discussion I need to make clear. Once the grand jury is done with assessing the whole case and they determine probable cause, they will issue a charging document, which is called an indictment.
I see.
And that's what they did in November of 2021. They issued an indictment against Quiboloy. But there is an indictment now. So, what's next? Sabi nga ni Atty. Jun, anong susunod doon? Well, medyo kata-kata nga dahil para bang walang nangyari kay Pastor Quiboloy kasi business as usual.
Yeah.
Sa Pilipinas pa rin siya, sikat pa rin siya. Kung talagang pupursigin ng American authorities yun, ang susunod na gagawin nila is to ask for extradition.
Okay.
Ano ba yung extradition? Kung may atraso sila dito sa Amerika, kailangan kunin namin para elitist siya kasi dito niya kinumit yung crime. Ngayon ang problema doon, while the process is simple, it's a lot more complicated when it gets to when we have to take into consideration the reality. Ano ba yung realidad? Yung sistema kasi sa Amerika, iba sa sistema sa Pilipinas. Maraming politika dyan pero ganito yung process. Magre-request ang US DOJ ng extradition. Gagawa sila ng extradition request. Iko-course nila through the Secretary of State ng US. Yung Secretary of State naman kokontakin ng Department of Foreign Affairs ng Pilipinas at yung Department of Foreign Affairs makikipag-correspond sa Philippine Department of Justice.
Okay.
Yung Department of Justice is going to study the merits of the extradition request. If they agree with it, sabihin nila, okay, kailangan extradite nga si Pastor Quiboloy. Hindi pa tapos yun. They have to go to court because the extradition order has to be signed by a judge. It has to be by virtue of a court order.
So, sandali, Atty. Jeng. When you say that there's going to be a court process, Does that mean that the court process is going to take place in the Philippines?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The extradition order has to be signed by a judge of the regional trial court. That's what my understanding
so problema
is.
dyan, pwedeng magtagal na naman yan.
Yun nga ang consensus ng mga nakausap natin na both verse US law pati Philippine laws na doon nagiging medyo komplikado eh. Kasi it turns out kapag halimbawa yung RTC judge sinabi, sige, sasign ako ng extradition order. Hindi pa tapos yun kasi I believe it's appealable.
Yeah.
Pwedeng i-appeal ni Quiboloy, pwedeng pumunta ng Court of Appeals, pwedeng pumunta ng Supreme Court. Alam mo noon natin na nag-practice tayo sa Pilipinas, ikaw ang attorney dyan na medyo tatagal yun. So yun ang that's the one thing na sinasabi kong it may make the whole process a little more complicated.
It's not as simple as that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Alam mo, Attorney Jeng, ang isang case na naalala ko dyan, yung case ni Mark Jimenez.
Yeah.
AKA Mark Crespo.
Mark Crespo na nag-request ng extradition ng US government sa Philippines. And I think
It took several years.
4 years, 5 years
Yeah.
bago
Around that
na-extradite
period,
si Mark Jimenez dito. No? Pero ang isang mabilis na extradition process na nangyari, nung request ng US government na extradite dito yung dating leader ng Abu Sayyaf,
Okay.
si Madhata Asagal Haipe.
Hirap ng pangalan na yun.
Oo.
Well, because it is a terrorism case.
Terrorism case. So, si Haipe, kasama yung mga Abu Sayyaf, nag-kidnap sila ng mga 16 people, apat ata daw US citizen. So, pinadala kagad ng Philippines dito si Haipe, at nasintensya ng 23 years. Merong isang interesting angle ako naisip dyan eh. Kasi kung halimbawang, let's say manalo si Bong Bong Marcos, baka lalong mas matagal. Dahil kasi, hindi ba doon sa invitation ni Pastor Quiboloy sa mga presidential candidates, siya lang ang tumanggap ng invitation ni Pastor Quiboloy.
And given the fact na Vice President niya is Sara Duterte, and of course, Sara Duterte is still the daughter of President Duterte, at close si Bongbong sa mga pamilyang ito. So anyway, for our next discussion, stay tuned. Pag-uusapan naman natin ang isa pang mainit na issue ngayon sa Pilipinas, ang tungkol sa inilabas na desisyon ng Comelec First Division regarding sa petition for disqualification ni Bong Bong Marcos.
Tony Jun, bumalik tayo sa programa at nadagdagan yung guest natin. Ang bagong guest natin dito, UP alumni din, kamukha ni Atty. Valdez, no? Atty. Cheng. Si Atty. Marlon Baldomero, political science major to sa Ateneo, pagkatapos nagtuloy sa UP. Anong year ka sa UP?
2006 ako nag-graduate.
O ikaw?
Huwag natin pag-usapan.
Okay. So, pagkatapos nagtuloy ka ng LLM dito, no? Sa Whittier College of Law, no?
Yes, in 2007.
Okay. Tapos, naging abogado ka rin sa California.
Yes.
Don't forget, meron ding masteral degree to si Atty. Marlon.
Sige. So, Jun, ano yung outline mo?
Okay, alright. Sometime in February 10, nagkaroon ng naglabas ng decision ang Commission on Election, First Division, regarding the petition for disqualification filed against Ferdinand Marcos Jr. or Bong Bong or BBM. And yung petition binasura ng Comelec. So, para malaman natin yung context nito, pag-usapan natin ano ba ang basis ng petition na ito. So, Attorney Marlon, can you briefly give a summary kung anong basis ng disqualification petition na final against BBM?
Okay. So, merong dalawang major issues na pinaratang laban kay BBM ng mga petitioner dito sa petition for his disqualification. Which is yung una is that he was convicted of a violation of the NIRC, which is the National Internal Revenue Code of the Philippines, specifically for non-filing of taxes.
Sinabi, hindi daw siya nag-file ng tax return in 1982, 83, 84, and 85, di ba?
Correct.
Okay.
And yung second, which turned out to be the major issue that was discussed in the ponente, by the ponente in this dispositive decision, is the conviction of a crime involving moral turpitude.
So nasa ano naman yan, no? Sa Section 12 yata, kung di ko nakakamali, ng Omnibus Election Code, na you are disqualified kung na-convict ka for a crime involving moral turpitude.
That is correct.
Yeah. Okay. Attorney Marlon, hindi ba na-convict si Bongbong gaya na na-convict siya sa Regional Trial Court? And then it was affirmed by the Court of Appeals ng violation ng Internal Revenue Code for non-filing of tax return?
Yes, that is correct. Kaya lang, Attorney Jun, ang naging issue dito is, for whatever reason, yung naging final disposition in the Court of Appeals decision neglected or omitted that penalty. In other words, walang nakalagay sa decision na perpetually disqualified si BBM doon sa decision ng Court of Appeals.
Yung may sabi ni Comelec Commissioner Ferolina sa kanyang decision?
Yes, isa sa mga pinagbasihan niya yan sa kanyang pag-deny ng petition for disqualification.
Ngayon naman, ito, alam ko, si Atty. Jeng, kaklase ito si former Commissioner Guanzon.
Yeah.
Nabasa mo ba yung desisyon ng kaklase mo?
Nabasa ko. Ngayon, nabisto niyo na kung anong year ako gumraduate. Anyway, nandun na rin lang tayo. Kaklase ko rin si former Chief Justice Melo Sereno.
Aha.
So, 1984.
Controversial yung mga classmate mo,
Ang problema kasi, ano ngayon ang status kung hindi in-include ng Court of Appeals yon sa kanilang confirmation or affirmation ng RTC? Ano ngayon ang status nung decision ng RTC na yon? Hindi naman siya ni-reverse, hindi naman siya sinupplement, hindi naman siya in-affirm in toto or in partially. So ano yung status nun? Hindi ko alam eh.
Tama ba yung sabi ng mga petitioners? Sabi na, okay, we agree. Hindi nilagay ng Court of Appeals at RTC yung additional penalty of perpetual disqualification from holding office. Ibig sabihin, hindi na siya pwedeng humabol uli. Hindi na pwedeng magkaroon ng posisyon sa any public office. Pero sabi nila, it is deemed written. Anong tingin mo doon, Attorney Jeng, Attorney Marlon?
Sa palagay ko, that is an implied adaptation of the RTC's or the trial court's finding. Number one. Number two, we have to consider that the RTC is a trial court. The Court of Appeals is not a trial court.
Okay.
The Court of Appeals, in the appellate process, as far as I know and as I remember, is bound by the factual findings of the trial court.
Correct.
So ngayon, kapag sinabi nilang deemed as written yun, in my opinion, that's an adaptation or an affirmation or a confirmation of the findings of fact of the Regional Trial Court, which means that Bong Bong Marcos remains convicted under the provisions of the NIRC.
Okay. Going back dun sa tanong ni Attorney Jeng tungkol sa status ng decision ng Court of Appeals, originally, nagkaroon ng appeal to the Supreme Court questioning that Court of Appeals decision.
Right.
But for unknown reasons, the Marcos camp decided to withdraw the appeal. And ang resulta nun ay final na yung decision ng Court of Appeals. Ang practical effect nito ay nung nire-review ng Commission on Elections ang decision ng Court of Appeals, since final na siya, hindi na siya pwedeng mabago.
I see. So hindi pwedeng pakialaman ng Commission on Election yung decision ng fellow adjudicated body, which is the Court of Appeals.
Attorney Jen, pumunta tayo din sa second issue tungkol doon sa disqualification or non-disqualification ni Bong Bong Marcos sa Comelec. Ang sabi ng mga petitioners na nag-file labang kay BBM, dapat daw disqualified siya dahil nag-commit daw siya ng crime involving moral turpitude dahil hindi siya nag-file ng income tax for 4 years. Habang vice governor o governor ata siya doon sa...
From 1982,
Ilocos.
83, 84 to 85.
Oh. So, Attorney Baldomero, ano ba yung mga experience mo tungkol sa mga kliyente mo na na-charge sila ng crime involving moral turpitude?
So, ang definition ng crime involving moral turpitude are such crimes that are based, vile, and depraved to the extent that it shocks the conscience.
Ba, medyo malalam yung mga sinabi mong yan Ano ba yung mga examples ng mga ganyan?
So, halimbawa, rape, murder, fraud. Yung merong mga involved na nagpapakita ng lack of moral character.
Parang inherently wrong, no? Immoral.
Yes.
Inherently wrong.
So, ikaw naman, Attorney Jing, sa experience mo doon sa Philippines, ano yung CIMT o yung crime involving moral turpitude?
Bukod dun sa sinabi ni Attorney Marlon, ang alam ko dyan, any offense that has a bearing on on a person's honesty. Diba? O bouncing checks.
Estafa.
O estafa, falsification of documents. Yan. Anything. Ganun din dito sa Amerika, ang pagkaintindi ko. Kapag merong bearing yan sa one's honesty, that may be considered as an offense involving moral turpitude.
So sa tingin mo, sa nangyari, yung allegation na 4 na taon, hindi siya nag-file ng income tax return. Inamin naman niya, di ba? Yung ba, sa palagay mo, sa opinion mo, Attorney Jeng, CIMT ba yun? O therefore dapat ma-disqualify siya?
Sa opinion ko, oo. Kasi dito sa Amerika, ganun yun eh.
Okay.
Pati, alam siguro to ni Attorney Marlon, yung Zari versus Flores. Kaso yun sa atin na nag-enumerate ng list of crimes that may be considered as offenses involving moral turpitude. And I think one of them was non-filing of taxes.
Oh, I see.
So, dito ganun din. Meron tayong federal case na hinawakan nun about 5-6 years ago na non-payment of taxes. So, moral turpitude yun. Sa palagay ko
So, Attorney Jen, I just want to point out a correction doon sa statement mo. Kasi doon sa case that you're citing, isa sa mga enumerate is actually the crime of tax evasion, which is separate and distinct from an offense involving the failure to file a tax return.
Of course.
Okay.
Of course. But I would argue that if you deliberately or intentionally not file your taxes, what is your intent behind doing that?
Hindi,
You don't want to pay your taxes.
Ang siguro, baka alam ng mga nanonood natin, si Wesley Snipes. Hindi ba, nakulong yan.
Nakulong ba siya?
Dahil hindi siya nag-file ng income tax.
Lalo na kapag ang non-filing mo is consecutive. Pagkatapos, public officer ka pa. Anong excuse mo doon? Another thing that we have to consider is kapag ka pinalampas mo yon, any other public officer can just say, oh, wala akong criminal liability kasi mere oversight lang yan, negligence yan, hindi naman intentional yan, hindi moral turpitude. Lahat na lang ng tao gagawing excuse yun. So, nangyayari, hindi na criminal lang non-payment of taxes, magiging civil liability na lang. So,
ano masasabi mo rin?
Ano mangyayari sa NIRC?
So, hindi naman natin pinagdedebatihan ngayon kung offense ba ang non-filing of taxes. In fact, it's established, inaamin naman kahit ng kampo ni BBM, that it is an offense.
Okay.
Si Wesley Snipes, as Attorney Ed brought up, was imprisoned or incarcerated because of that offense. Okay. Pero, ang tanong dito is it a crime involving moral turpitude? Okay. So, hindi lahat ng mga offense, kahit na makukulong ka or kahit na merong penalty of imprisonment, automatic na CIMT siya.
And I think yun ang gist ng decision ni Commissioner Ferolino. Sinabi niya na yung non-filing of income tax return is not a crime involving moral turpitude. Kasi sabi niya, ang non-filing daw is not inherently wrong. Kaya lang nagiging mali dahil may batas na nagsasabi it is a crime kung hindi mo ginawa yun. In other words, kung walang batas na nagsasabi na illegal ang non-filing of tax return, it is not wrong. Parang ganun yung reasoning niya.
I think that was a poorly worded decision. Dahil kasi ang naging impact noon, yung mga mamamayan sa Philippines na sinasabi nila, may mga mahihirap kapag hindi nag-file ng tax. nape-penalize. Samantalang yung mga powerful, kagaya ni BBM,
Yeah.
sabi nila hindi naman daw inherently
wrong.
Inherently wrong, di ba?
Yeah. Pero I think, going back to Attorney Jeng, whom you mentioned a while ago, classmate niya si ni Commissioner Guanzon, sa separate opinion niya, ano bang sabi niya dito? I think ito yung focus ng kanyang separate opinion.
I think I don't specifically remember that part of her decision that dealt with mala in se or mala prohibita. But I think there's a way to skirt that issue. I think we could easily resolve the BBM DQ case without resorting to the termination of CIMT or not. I think CIMT here is a red herring issue. The issue here is there's a specific special law that punishes non-payment of taxes, and that's Republic Act 8424, the NIRC. The NIRC is very clear. And we went to law school and we were taught that where the law is clear and unequivocal, there's no room for interpretation. Only application. Where the law does not qualify, neither should we. NIRC Section 286 is very clear. And one more thing that we have to realize and remember, law school, naturo rin sa atin to. The NIRC, compared to the revised penal code, the NIRC is a special law.
Okay.
And the special laws, they form part of Philippine criminal laws. Thus, no criminal intent is needed in order to find a person liable for crimes punished under special penal laws. And that's exactly what the NIRC is. Kung walang regard to intent, hindi na problema ang CIMT. Hindi na problema.
Pero I think
all
yung,
you need to do is apply
yeah.
Section 286 of the NIRC.
Yeah.
It's a special law.
Yeah, if I remember, yung sinabi ni Commissioner Guanzon, sabi niya, I think you mentioned that a while ago, dahil for 4 consecutive years, si BBM from 82, 83, 84, 85, hindi siya nag-file ng tax return niya. Sabi niya, merong willfulness and deliberateness sa hindi niya pag-file ng tax return. And that in itself, sabi niya, would make the act of BBM as involving moral turpitude.
Of course
Para
it
bang,
does.
lalo na, public official siya, vice governor, governor, sophisticated siya, hindi sabihin, oh, nagkamali ako, hindi ko alam.
Not only that, it constitutes a gross disregard of the law. Merong order na bayaran mo yung tax, hindi niya pa rin binabayaran. Pagkatapos, governor ka, vice governor ka, you should know that you're held to a higher standard kasi public officer ka eh. Kaya nga yung special law, may special punishment for public officers. Kasi you're held to that standard. That's the reason why kailangan talagang just i-apply lang yung Republic 8424.
Ano masasabi mo ron, Atty. Baldemera?
Rebuttal.
Well, okay. Ang pagkakaintindi ko doon sa decision was nag-tender ng payment si BBM.
Okay.
Okay, but he tendered it after the fact. Okay. Na nangyari na yung offense. Tungkol naman doon sa mga hindi niya pag-file ng 82, 83, 84, 85, ang understanding ko is the NIRC came into effect kailan, June?
1986.
86.
Yeah.
Okay, so merong principle under Philippine jurisprudence na hindi natin pwedeng i-apply retroactively ang mga batas.
Let's clarify that. Yung sinabi mong point na yun. That's actually an interesting point. Before January 1986, wala yung provision na yun ng NIRC na you are, I think yung sinasabi mo yung tungkol sa perpetually disqualified. Yun ang sinasabi. Yung ano naman, moral turpitude, nasa Omnibus Election Code.
I see.
Yun ang ginagawa na batayan nilang petitioner na dahil convicted siya for non-filing of ITR involving moral turpitude yun. And therefore, sabi nila, disqualified ka.
Ngayon, pumunta tayo sa isang sa politics. Dahil kasi pare-pareho tayo mga political science major, no?
Yeah.
Okay. So merong kumakalat na na conspiracy theory. In fact, si Atty. Jeng ata parang nagkaroon kami ng discussion tungkol diyan eh.
Yeah.
So let's say halimbawa si Bong Bong Marcos ang palaing manalo bilang presidente.
Okay.
At si Sara Duterte ang vice president. Okay? Biglang iakyat yung case na yan sa Supreme Court. matalo sa Supreme Court si Bongbong Marcos,
Bong Bong Marcos.
at i-disqualify siya. So, sino ang magiging presidente?
Well, sabi nila, let's follow the rule on succession. And of course, the Vice President, sabi nila, the spare tire, the fifth wheel, siya ang mag-fill up ng void. So, dahil na-disqualify ang Presidente, ang Vice President ngayon ang magte-take over. So, para bang if we follow your line of thinking, Attorney Ed, na napakatalino na nag-isip ng conspiracy theory ito, kung ito nga talaga ang plano.
Hindi ako nag-isip nun. Narinig ko lang.
Yeah. But this is actually a brilliant strategy kung yan man ang strategy nila, no? Kasi, okay, hayaan nating makapasok si BBM.
Bakit? Nakakasigurado ba siya sa Supreme Court na kakampi ni Sara Duterte yung mga nakaupo ron?
Well, ilan ba yung Supreme Court? 15? I
15.
think 13 out of the 15 justices have been appointed by President Duterte.
Ganun ba?
But even before that, nasa ano muna tayo bago tayo pumunta ng Supreme Court? Comelec and Bank muna. Kasi yung nag-decision sa the decision, first division lang ng Comelec. So, pagkatapos mo sa first division, bago ka umakyat sa Supreme Court, dapat mag-appeal ka muna sa N-Bank. Ibig sabihin yung buong kalipunan ng mga commissioners sa Comelec. And there are 7 commissioners. And I think 6 of them are appointed also by Duterte.
Ganun ba?
I think the timing here is important.
Yeah.
If that conspiracy theory is in the works, they would not want, and they want to attain the objective that we're talking about. Palagi ko hindi nila i-disqualify si BBM before the election. They will have to wait until after the election kasi iba ang succession rule applicable kung ma-disqualify si BBM
Before election.
bago election. Kasi anybody can substitute with the last name Marcos can substitute for Bong Bong. So ngayon, kung susundin natin yung conspiracy theory na yun and the intent behind it, the architects of that the architects behind that would do well if they were to wait until after the elections. Kasi kapag ka na-disqualify si Bongbong, say for example, August or September, then the Vice President becomes President. And then Sara, then assuming that Sara, and it appears like, Sarah's running away with it, then she becomes President.
Anong sa tingin mo, Tony Baldomero, doon sa
Conspiracy theory.
Sa tingin ko, it's a very interesting theory and masarap siyang pag-usapan, masarap pag-isipan kung plausible ba siya or hindi. Personally, sa tingin ko, plausible siya.
Yeah.
Kasi, tama yung sinabi ni Attorney Jun, na kung sino man nakaisip nito, is very smart. Genius level strategy ang kailangan nito.
Sa Philippines, anything is plausible.
Yeah, and kung titignan natin ang climate or yung turn of events in Philippine politics, kung sino man yung nag-transition from mga heroes, mga bida, yung mga Aquinos, na ngayon naging na silang mga dilawan, na sila yung may kasalanan ng lahat ng mga problema sa Pilipinas. Genius move din yun eh.
Genius move.
Yeah, if you think about it 10 years ago, wala namang term na dilawan.
Yeah.
If you think about it 10 years ago, tumakbo si Bongbong for an office and he lost.
Yeah, Vice President.
Tumakbo si Imelda for office and she lost. Tumakbo rin siyang Vice President.
Yeah.
Okay? For that type of rehabilitation to happen in such a short amount of time, merong force behind that. Merong think tank, merong mastermind
Parang sinasabi, revision of history.
Oo. Hindi yan mangyayari overnight, hindi yan mangyayari nang walang nagpo-pull ng strings, na walang nagma-mastermind.
May puppet master.
And a lot of money behind it.
Exactly.
Kaya hindi posible yung
umamin, di ba? Merong employee from Cambridge Analytica who came out and said that they were given a lot of money by the Marcoses to precisely rehabilitate their image. So, hindi malabo na merong behind the scenes na nagmamaniobra nito.
Alam mo naman sa Philippines, money is king. Diba?
Kasi kung,
And they have lots of money.
pati yung mental conditioning, kung nag-work dito sa Amerika, lalo mas mag-work sa Pilipinas yun. Yan ang ginagawa nila, lalo mga surveys na yan. I think Bongbong is really leading sa polls, but I don't think by 40 or 35 points.
Okay.
I think they're deliberately padding that to condition the minds of the people in two ways. Number one, yung mga pro-Isko o pro-Lenny, mawawala na ng gana. Tambak pala tayo, huwag na lang tayo bumoto.
At saka yung mga undecided
Pangalawa, yung
voter.
mga undecided, given the bandwagon mentality
Right.
of the Filipino, sabi nila, dito na tayo sa panalo.
Sayang ang boto
dito na
natin.
tayo, sayang, dito na tayo. Ganun yun eh. Kaya, although I think there's some truth to the survey saying that Marcos Jr. is up, I think it's true, considering marami talaga siyang resources. Pero I don't think by as much as 35 or 40 points. I don't think so.
Merong poll, di ba, na lumabas ang approval rating ni Duterte was 90%.
Yes, of course.
In the middle of COVID.
Yeah.
In the middle of COVID.
So-
And in the middle of mishandling the COVID.
So, very interesting yung discussion natin. Kukumbidahin ulit natin tong dalawang guest natin sa mga future discussions natin. So, nagpapasalamat po kami at sana ay manood at makinig uli kayo sa susunod na episode ng Batas, Pulitika at iba pa. Yun.
Thank you. Maraming salamat sa aming mga televiewers. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and press the like button. Salamat po.
Maraming salamat, Attorney Jeng at Attorney Marlon Bandumero.
It's our pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.